Great. We'll have a formal beginning. Amaku aloha mahalo. E ho mai kai I ke hale. Ame ke po imanu. Mama. Blessings to this place and all these people gathered here. My name is Serge Kahili King, and I'm from Volcano, and I represent an organization called Aloha International that does this and a lot of other things. We'd like to begin with a blessing, and we'll have a couple of our staff who will do that for us. Susan, who is our kumuhula and one of our teachers of this knowledge that we come around the world, and Lois, who is also teaches Huna and various art forms, including Hawaiian string figures.
And since our topic today is Aloha, yeah, there is a chant, we've done it before, and it actually, if you get the essence of this, you might want to do it again in your life, because it's a great reminder for choosing Aloha. We have been taught this by our kumu to chant the sun up every day, and as we chant the sun up, the deeper meanings behind this love for the sun to come is the decision to bring aloha as a way for living that day, to invite it to be our guiding inspiration for the day, because Hele is from this island and she loved her dream time, she loved sleeping. But she knew she couldn't stay there forever, so she instructed only her baby sister, her youngest sister, that she trusted and she loved and knew loved her back, to be the one to wake her up. Because the other ones might play tricks on her and might not be the best way to wake up. So she said, only Hi'iake Pupoli Opele would wake her up. That was her choice. That was her decision. She wanted this transition from this nice dream time into the waking time, to be peaceful, gentle, full of love. And so as we think about her decision, we're inspired to make decisions throughout the day that will be loving, inviting love to be our path, to be easy transitions. No, we have to get out of bed, make it be fun, make it be easy. If we have to go do work, then it can be fun and not resisting. So it's like helping us to change patterns of difficulty or expecting the worst into expecting the best. So this is a call for the sun, but for that enlightenment of the path of love, the path of choosing a happy transition. Why don't you follow the words with us the first time? We'll do it one more time with all of you as best as you might want to. Sing along with us and feel that call for love. Okay? Aloha e ka la e ka ua e nei, ka puno no I ka maka o ka leua, huahi o la ni pele, ua mali e, he na we ki ke ia na ka pohi e. see you.
Now, we like to begin with a story related to what we're going to talk about. So, we'll begin this way with the code that opens my iPad. Okay. Okay. Ikawaka hiko, mamualoa okapene kuke. Once upon a time, long before Captain Cook, Pele, the volcano goddess, and her sisters lived in and around Halima'uma'u in Kilauea caldera. Halima'uma'u, most of you probably know, but that's the crater within the great big crater. Okay? And that's where the Pele comes out of, where the molten lava comes out. So the story's been told many times of Pele rising up in spirit, as Susan started to tell a little bit, going over to Kauai, having a love affair with the chief Lohiau there, coming back. Now she was in spirit form, but she had the power to look like a real woman, feel like a real woman. And then she came back because her lava body was calling her. And she sent her little sister, Hi'iaka, usually called Hi'iaki Kapolio Pele, to go back in human form, travel the route, get Lohiau and bring him back. Now, a lot of people have heard that story. The further story where they made a deal and Pele broke the deal. They made a kind of a pact because Pele had a human friend and she wanted to make sure her friend was safe, and she had a special forest down by the coast at Lava Tree Park, that area, of her ohia trees. And she wanted Pele to promise that she wouldn't hurt them. And in return, she would go pick up Lohiau and she wouldn't play with him, okay? So she would just bring him back. That was the deal. And Pele got angry because Hi'iaka was taking so long, and so she overflowed the forest, killed the human friend, and so when when Hi'iaka came back, she saw that. She said, okay, there's no more pact. So she made love to Lohiau. So Pele kills Lohiau. So Hi'iaka brings him back to life. And finally, they all make friends, and Hi'iaka and Lohiau go back to Kauai. That's the usual story that people hear when they hear a little more of it. Well, today we're going to go into a part of the story that's very, very rarely told. This is the story, and I can only give you excerpts today. This is the story of the actual journey that Hi'iaka undertook once she left Halima'uma'u. And she traveled on Big Island, crossed over to Maui, traveled over to Molokai, traveled from there to Oahu, and from there to Kauai. So I'm going to tell you some of the things that happened that show the aloha of Hi'iaka on this part of the journey. So when she started out, just before she left, Pele gave her some powers to help protect herself, but Hi'iaka used them for protecting her friends as well as herself. And one of them, as we'll get to a little bit, was this magic skirt. That was kind of like her magical defense system. But just before she went, Pele asked this one woman to accompany her, to be her companion. Palau, what was it? Palai, that's what it was. And this is relating to a fern. And she had a magical skirt of ferns too, but that doesn't get into this story. At any rate, they started off, and on the way, before they could get very far, there was another woman who asked to join the party. And her name was Wahine Oma'u. Now, it's very curious. I've seen that translated as pale-skinned woman, which is not correct. For whatever reason, it means green woman. There's no doubt about it, green. Now, maybe she had a lot to do with plants or something like that, but at any rate, that was her name. So the three of them went together. And one of the first places they went from here all the way down to the coast. And as they were going along the coast, they reached a place that's called Ha'ena. Now there's also a Ha'ena on Kauai, but this is a ha'ena that's south of Hilo. And there was a beach there. And they encountered some fishermen. And these fishermen, when they were sleeping, the women, these fishermen came up and tried to rape them. And so Hi'iaka disguised the women and put a kind of a veil of illusion across the men's eyes, so that when they left them, the men were on the beach trying to make love to two stones. Okay? Big Hawaiian joke. Okay. And so they left there and they went on from there. So Hi'iaka started out by protecting her female companions in that way. The first companion that I didn't mention very much, why she was such a dear friend, this was Hopoi before they left. And so she said her goodbyes to Hopoi and told her that she'd be taken care of. Hopoi, according to one version of the story, was a human girl who figured out how to dance the hula. She would go down the coast and she would watch the waves and watch the wind and the trees and make movements of her body to try and copy that. And according to this version of the story, that's how the hula was born. And they met on a cliff, Hi'iaka and Hopoi, and they became very good friends, and Hopoi taught Hi'iaka how to dance the hula. And as far as I know, one of the very few, if any, stories in the world where a human taught the gods something. Right? And then Hi'iaka later taught Pele, and so that's how they both got involved with the hula. So that's the relationship with Hopoi. We're going back. They have just left Hi'iaka, Wahine o Ma'o, Palau Palai. They have just left Ha'ena. And now they're traveling further. They don't get any farther than the forest. They decide to take a kind of an upland path, and they went to the area that today is known as Panaeva. Now the reason it's known as Panaeva is because Panaeva was the name of a monster dragon that used to inhabit that forest with all of its spirits. And throughout the story, Hi'iaka is constantly fighting dragons. The dragons, called Mo'o, were kind of the personification of evil. And so Panaeva, the dragon, with all of its followers, tried to attack the women. And Hi'iaka fought a very fierce battle all day and most of the night until finally she was able to win. And the dragon was defeated. We only have the name now as the name of the forest in that area where the zoo is. And then they continued on through Hilo. Well, they crossed Hilo okay until they got to the north end where they have Wailuku River. And at that time, the only way to get across it was a very rough, dangerous river, and the only way to get across was, by wading or by some means. But when they got to the river, there was a bridge. And there were two men guarding the bridge, and they said that they were the toll keepers. And you had to pay a toll in order to cross the bridge. Well, now, Hi'iaka had some magical powers, and so she used her vision where she could see through illusions, and she saw two things. First, she saw that these were not men, they were dragons. Second, she saw that the bridge was designed, it was really made of illusion, and when you got to the middle, you would fall down to your death in the river. And that's what these dragons were trying to do. So, of course, she magically got her friends across and killed the dragon in the process. The two dragons, she had to chase them down and all up and down the river, but she finally got rid of them, and her friends were safe. A little further on, near Waipio Valley, there was the women wanted to go swimming, and Hi'iaka told them not to. And they insisted. It was such a beautiful day, the water was so beautiful, and Hi'iaka said, no, you can't do that, this is not good. So they disobeyed her, went down to the water, just started to get in the water, and when Hi'iaka showed them why, there was a shark, this big giant shark that was hidden there in some seaweed. And so Hi'iaka revealed him, and the women scrambled out of the water, and so Hi'iaka was able to save them. So on they go. This time they didn't get very far from Waipio. There's another valley called Waimanu, and they were very close to that. Another dragon with all kinds of followers. This one was really a mean one, though. This one loved to get travelers and just tear them to pieces. So when they got there and they tried to attack Hi'iaka and her friends, and again, Hi'iaka helped them, and she battled the dragon. And not only did she battle the dragon to protect her friends, but there were two men who had been traveling who had been very, very badly injured by the dragon. And so Hi'iaka stopped and took the time to heal them before she went on. Now they went further up the coast to Kohala. And here, Palau Palai, we don't know why or how or what the story part of that one was, but she left. We don't hear about her anymore. So Hi'iaka arranged for her and Wahine O'Ma'o to take canoes across over to Maui. All right, that was fine, except something about these fishermen and sailors and things. These guys tried to get too fresh with the women as well, and Hi'iaka had to use some trickery and illusion to fool them so that they didn't bother them on the way across. So they got over safely. They landed on Maui, crossed over to the north, and again, this time they got to Wailuku. Now there's another Wailuku, and this is right near Kahului, if you know anything about Maui, on the west side. And so they, when they were walking along that area, there was a cliff, and Wahine O'Ma'o stopped because she looked down and she saw this woman who was trying to catch fish, but having a very hard time. And it's like she couldn't keep them in her fingers. And they watched them for a while, and Wahine O'Ma'o finally saw that, the woman wasn't a real, because sometimes she could see through her, and it was really the spirit of a woman. And she felt so sorry for her, that the spirit of this woman was hanging around, which meant that she wasn't completely dead yet, wherever her body was. So Wahine O'Ma'o asked Hi'iaka to help the girl. Well, Hi'iaka really didn't want to at first, because she didn't know her, but the more she watched her and more she saw what she was doing, the more compassion she felt. And so she just, she saw she was a spirit. So she caught the spirit up and let the spirit lead them back to where the body was. Now the body was where the parents were. Now the problem with catching the fish was that even in the spirit you could see that the fingers were cut off. Don't know how, but they were all maimed. So when Hi'iaka went there, she used a traditional Hawaiian technique for bringing a spirit back into the body, which is starting at the toe, the idea of this big toe, and you would have to push the spirit in through the big toe and then kind of massage it all the way up through the body till it was completely inside. So the girl came back to life, and then Hi'iaka also healed her fingers. Okay? That was a beautiful thing to do. So on they go. Now as they're traveling through what today we call the West Maui Mountains, the actual, apparently original Hawaiian name for that whole area of that extinct volcano is actually Maui Komohana, which means West Maui. So when we see we call it about West Maui, that's not a Western name. That's an old translation of a Hawaiian name. At any rate, they're traveling through there, and they encountered very great hostility, very bad. In other words, no hospitality at all from the people. And Hi'iaka realized that this was because of the fault of the king, who told them that this was how they wanted them to treat strangers. Well, this was you can't imagine how bad this was in ancient Hawaiian for strangers to be treated the way they were treated. So they kept going further through, and then finally the king's name was Olepau. And he got sick. And so he had a sorceress for his assistant. And she tried to get Hi'iaka to come and help the king. Well, no, she wasn't going to help the king. There was no aloha in him, the way that they were treated. So on she went. And so actually this other woman, this first sorceress, she sent soldiers to try and capture Hi'iaka to make her come back and force her to heal the king. Well, of course, that didn't work. But this time what Hi'iaka did was she had the ability to shape change herself and also wahine o ma'o, first of all into an old woman and a little girl with a dog. And when the sorcerers saw through that, they ran on through the forest and changed to two young girls making leis. And the sorcerers saw through that, and they ran on and changed themselves to two housewives, just ordinary housewives sitting outside a hut. Well, that finally fooled the sorcerers, and so when the troops left, they were able to get to the coast. This time they found nice sailors to take them across, and they landed over on Molokai. So on Molokai, they were received very well, wonderful hospitality. They went to Halawa Valley, and then they started over by the north. And going over further on the north side, they, what do you think? Another dragon. This time, this dragon also had a bridge and was going to wait for people to cross it. It wasn't a real bridge, so they would fall down and the dragon would then feast on them. So what Hi'iaka did this time was use her skirt, and she made it stretch and turned her skirt into a real bridge so that she and wahine o ma'o could cross over there safely, and of course on the way she got rid of the dragon. So now they go down south to Kaunakakai, which is on the south shore of Molokai. It's like today considered the capital of Molokai. And from there they got more canoes, this time very nice sailors again, and took them over to Oahu. And on Oahu, they landed at Makapu'u, which is the easternmost point. And from there they traveled north. And they traveled north all the way, let's see, to the name of the place. It's not a name I hear much usually, so let's see. They got to, it's Kualoa Point, which is north of Kaneohe. And so they got to that point there, and another dragon. This one was called Mokoli'i, which is curious because anyway, she fought him and they battled and they battled and they battled and they fought. Finally, she killed him, and his bones formed the island that today we see as Chinaman's Hat, is the English name of that. That's actually the bones of Mokoli'i, and the actual island name now is Mokoli'i also. Okay? So that's the remains of a dragon. Now then we come to a very curious part of Hawaiian culture for the rest of this journey across Oahu, because according to the first ancient legend, which again very few people really hear about, when Pele and her sisters first came, as they stopped in different places, they left relatives to guard them and to wait for them. And these relatives, the spirit of the relatives, apparently merged with the land. So that when Hi'iaka's traveling, quite frequently, across Oahu especially, quite frequently she's chanting to various land features as if they were relatives, and expressing her aloha and giving them a chant of honor and communicating with them. And in the story, they communicate back. So it's somewhat close to what the Australian Aborigines do, because they think of the land features as their ancestors as well, as the remains of their ancestors. Well, the Hawaiians, at least in this Pele story especially, had this kind of thing too, where they would chant to the land features. Now maybe these were represented ancestors who were left there, but maybe it's such a deep aloha for the land that certain special places were considered alive, aware, and responsive, and part of the family. There's another thing that's useful to it also when we stop to think about it, that is again similar to the Australian Aborigines, because these landmarks served as landmarks, waypoints for somebody traveling along that route. And you knew where you were by the story of the landmark there. And the Australian Aborigines have something similar that they call song lines, which is a chant that describes the various landmarks as if they were people and animals. So the Hawaiians had their version of that. Okay? Very interesting in this story. So she greets all of her relatives, finally comes to the last one on Oahu, which was called Pohaku o Kauai. Now, this was a relative in the Pele legend. There used to be a big rock at the very far northeastern end of Oahu. It was right on the point. If anybody's been up there, there's a cave up there, but it's a rough area. But there used to be a rock there that was called the Rock of Kauai, possibly relating to another story in which Maui was trying to bring the islands together, and that was a leftover. At any rate, for Hi'iaka, it was a relative. But that rock is no longer there. But it was at this time, and so she got her relative to help her find some more canoemen to take her across the channel all the way over to Kauai. And at Kauai, that's when the rest of her story continues. Okay? So that's the story of Hi'iaka's journey that is very seldom told. So Pipi Holo Ke Ka'au, the tale, that's the story, is told. Now we get into the topic. The topic today is how to live aloha. Now, that sounds very nice, but you can't live aloha unless you know what aloha is. Okay? And a lot of people have a very, very narrow idea of what it is and no idea of what it isn't. So let's start with that a little bit. First of all, and most everybody knows this, but I have to begin with this, we use it as a greeting. And the type of greeting, it's hello or goodbye, but also if you add words to that, you get ideas that have to do with tell you the time of day, the intensity of the affection that goes with the greeting, lots of shades of greeting that can be brought with this word aloha, according to what you add to it. So that's most general use is for that. The basic meaning of the word is love. And so the greetings are actually a kind of a blessing or a kind of gift of love that people give each other. But we have to go further into that. So we're going to get the help. A dictionary, which was primarily put together by a very, very wise Hawaiian woman called Mary Pukui. In the dictionary, these are the ideas that are the meanings that are given to aloha. The word love, affection, compassion, sympathy, pity, kindness, sentiment, grace, charity, greeting, salutation, regards, sweetheart, lover, loved one, goes on a minute, beloved, loving, kind, compassionate, charitable, lovable, to love, to be fond of, to show kindness or mercy or pity or charity or affection, to venerate, to honor, to remember with affection, to greet and to hail, and implied in all of that is friendship. Now, those are the dictionary meanings. All of those kinds of things are involved with this word. We can look at the roots of the word and get some more meaning. Because in the roots, alo, the first part, means front or face. Okay? And in one dictionary, it's to share an experience. The word oha means spreading like vines, thriving, to grow lush. It means affection and love, and also has to do with greeting by itself, and to greet someone with affection. To show joyous affection or friendship, here's where we get friendship in here, and just joy. That's the last part. Sometimes the word ha is included because it ends in ha. And that's because it's meanings of breath, life, and spirit. And so ha, however, has many other meanings that might or might not be applied, but all of that is part of the deeper meaning in the roots of this word. So one way of expressing aloha, the meaning of aloha as far as its roots go, would be joyfully sharing breath and love face to face. What's interesting about that way of translating it is it describes one of the oldest forms of Hawaiian greeting called a honi. Translated as a kiss, the traditional Hawaiian honi is where two people hold each other's shoulders, bring their faces together, press their noses side by side, and inhale each other's breath. And it's been said that in the old days, doing that, someone could tell if a person was a relative, could tell if they were good-hearted or not, could tell if they were healthy or not. Okay? Today we're seeing a lot more of a Maori variation, the way the Maori do it, which is pressing foreheads together. And there are even variations on that. But the traditional Hawaiian is pressing the nose side by side, not rubbing noses. That's Eskimo. Okay? Pressing and breathing. Okay? But that's really comes close to that translation from the roots of the word. Okay? So now, some Hawaiians have borrowed a Western technique of giving a meaning to each letter of the word. In fact, they did this even there was a law that was passed, not a law of obligation, because you can't do that with aloha, but a law of guidance for aloha between all the legislators. Okay? And they used one of these variations, starting with akahi to represent the A, and that means kindness to be expressed with tenderness. Next word, lokahi, for the L, meaning unity, to be expressed by harmony. Next was olu olu, for the O, meaning agreeable, and to be expressed with pleasantness. And then ha'a, meaning humility, to be expressed as modesty. And ahunui, for the last A, meaning patience, to be expressed with persistence and perseverance. Okay? Now, a very important thing to realize is that the Hawaiian concept of love doesn't include any negatives. There's no fear, there's no anger, there's no jealousy. None of these have anything to do with love. And they recognize that. That's the way they interpreted it. Okay? Another very important thing to realize is that aloha requires, by its nature, reciprocity. What that means is aloha has to be returned to be fulfilled. Now, there's no law against not returning it, but it isn't complete unless there's an exchange. I'm going to give you an example from Africa, where this kind of feeling is expressed by the tribal peoples way out in the bush. And it gives a good example. I had work that was involved with providing food to people who were hungry. That was one of the things we did. And so there was a village that was starving because way up in the north of a place called Togo, the people were starving because their new harvest had not come in yet. And they had several weeks before the food was ripe enough to eat. And they had run out of last year's stock. So I got a caravan together, a safari, actually. And it really looked like one because we had guys carrying big boxes of food on their shoulders. We could only reach it by foot. And we crossed alligator-infested rivers, and it was quite an adventure. We got to the village, and we gave them the food, and they were, of course, tremendously grateful. But it wasn't complete from their point of view. So we said our goodbyes and we left, and a few miles back across the river, I was resting in another village. And the next day, just before we were ready to leave, I was told that there were 2 young men from the village we had helped waiting to see me. So I came out of my hut, and they came up, and they gave me the scrawniest chicken that you ever saw in your life. And what I learned was their father, the chief, had sent them out, just as soon as I left, had sent them out searching everywhere through the fields to find a chicken. It had taken them all day to find the chicken and then bring the chicken to me as their return gift. They could not have honored themselves unless they had reciprocated. And I met that thing a lot in Africa. And it's here in Hawaii too, and it's part of Aloha. Okay? So, what this means in practical terms, Aloha is not unconditional love. Okay? It's a gift or a blessing to be exchanged. How can I put this? It's still a gift, but exchanging it fulfills what is being done. Okay? It's like reaching out your hand to shake someone. Doesn't work if they don't shake back. Okay? That's part of the exchange. Okay? If you offer aloha and it isn't returned, you're not obligated to keep giving it. You're not obligated to stop, but you're not obligated to keep giving it out either. Okay? That's understood. You don't give it because you have to, or because you're supposed to, or because it's required. It's got to be a gift, or it's not aloha. But you're not obligated if it's not returned. And there's a Hawaiian proverb. So anyway, if you are offered aloha and you don't give it back, don't be surprised if it's not offered again. You know, that kind of goes with it too. Okay? So there's a proverb about love. Ua kaluma kanaka I ke aloha. Love is natural among people. When there's no fear or anger between people, love blooms without effort. It happens spontaneously. And even strangers get together, and when there's no anger or fear, they become friends very quickly because it's natural. There's another proverb, He manu ke aloha, a'ohe lali kau ole, which means love is like a bird. There is no branch that it does not perch on. And this means love can be expressed anytime, anywhere, by anyone. Right? And finally, this proverb, He punawai kahiwale ke aloha. Love is a spring that flows freely. You cannot demand it, or control it, or barter it, or buy it. It's a gift, given without strings, or it isn't aloha. If you don't fight it and don't fear it, love is always available to everyone. In fact, like some people say, it's the very thing that makes the world go round. Pau ka'olelo, the story is told. Have any comments or questions?
That it's not, like the part about if you extend it and it's not returned, that is
Yeah, it's incomplete.
exactly.
Yeah. Good. Anything else?
I've been fighting a lot of dragons.
You've been fighting a lot of dragons?
Yes, I've been fighting a lot of dragons for a lot of years now. And in my process of doing this, the other day, it just sort of opened up to me that the enemy is within,
Ah,
you see.
it always
That's
is.
where it all is. It's right there.
That's right.
And, you know, outfoxing myself by shape-shifting when I don't even know I'm doing it,
Mm.
you see, or coming back, because everybody's perception is so different.
Right.
And we're used in the Western world of thinking of these things as multiple personality disorders instead of multidimensional realities. So this is very interesting to me, you know, projecting. It seems like we're back to that 1960s projection. And the dragons are really out here.
Yeah,
They're right here.
that's right. Good perception, good insight. All right. Yes.
Well, I'm just wondering, I think part of my inspiration in coming up today, like that the talk was on like how to live aloha, and it seems like there's so many challenges, I guess, with the dragons or, different things that come up. And so really, for me it was like, wow, how, so I guess I'm looking for like, when we're encountering like maybe blocks to being in that aloha, like what, do you have tools or skills or
Oh, sure, sure.
suggestions?
And the tools and the skills are kind of implied in the things that were talked about, because especially when you're working with yourself and the blocks and things that you might have and your own dragons, things like that, you need to use aloha on yourself. Okay? Because sometimes it's not really a dragon. Sometimes it's a part of you crying out for help. It's a part of you that's been injured by an idea or something bad, and it's the part that's hurting. Mercy, compassion, helpfulness, kindness to yourself. Blessing, which is one of the most beautiful ways. We have a little booklet, the pink one back there. Please take one. It's a booklet on how to use aloha and how to bless and the power that that has. So, right, I didn't spell out techniques in the talk. The techniques are implied in the meanings of the word. Yeah, but there's techniques back there, okay, if you want. Okay. Yes?
Question about your story. So the Pele sister,
Yes.
I forgot her name.
Hi'iaka.
Yeah, okay. So throughout the story, she's helping her friends. She's
Yes.
constantly saving them.
And healing others too.
And healing others along the way. And so this is demonstrations of her aloha.
Yes.
Over and over and over again. And yet, there wasn't really any mention in the story about, the friends returning that. And I'm wondering if companionship itself isn't a reciprocity.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes, it is. In fact, that's included in the meanings of the word, friendship, okay, which is part of the aloha. So yeah, they're being with her, they're staying with her, they're undergoing the dangers with her. Now, I didn't get in all the details of the story, which would take too long, but there are things that those women did. For instance, in one of the areas, Palau Palai used her fern skirt to confuse all of the monsters and give Hi'iaka time to prepare herself better. So there were a lot of little things like that, things that Wahine O'Ma'o did. So they were participants in the whole thing. Yes?
And I think that's kind of neat to know about the story is that Pele asked all of her other brothers and sisters to do it, and they wouldn't do it because they knew of the dangers. They knew it was not an easy, and they knew if they left Pele alone, she might be explosive and not easy to handle. So
Yeah.
Hi'iaka
loved her elder sister very much.
so much.
Okay,
And she didn't so much.
In that case, however, her aloha wasn't returned.
Yeah.
And so there were consequences.
The fears were stronger than the aloha.
Yes, right.
And I think what's really neat is that Hi'iaka took the time, knowing that that might not come back good for her because she was on a mission.
That's the part of what aloha is, and so what's the important part is you extend it without knowing whether it's going to be returned or not. You don't assume it won't be returned and therefore don't give it. That'll never get you anywhere. Okay? In whatever measure you can or that seems appropriate, you extend the aloha. Hope for the best. most of the time you get it. Not always.
So it's interesting for me because I'll pick up hitchhikers when I have room in the car or even when but if I'm in a hurry to get somewhere, then it's when I say, oh, I'm sorry, I gotta keep going. And that's something for me to stretch a little bit more and trust that I'll be at the right time, even if I stop and pick somebody up. That's a good one for me.
Yes, right. It's amazing how, see, time is really an illusion itself. And it can stretch and bend and shrink and do all sorts of strange stuff when we keep our focus on the good that we're doing. Yes, that's right. Good.
Aloha, everyone. Does everyone have a stone at this point or a piece of nature? Everybody's got some. Okay. Almost everybody has something.
Getting close.
Getting close, huh? All right. So I invite you to look at this piece of nature and to notice that there are parts to it. It's not just one lump of something. There are different aspects, different things that have gone into this piece of nature that you have here. Very much like all the people that have gone into your life. All the people that you have connected with in your lifetime. And so let this piece of nature symbolize a whole collection of wonderful people, and perhaps not so wonderful, at least they didn't seem so wonderful at the time, but all the people that have come into your life. And so let's do a little bit of healing around them. So the first thing to do, I think, is to do a little forgiveness. So look at your piece of nature and let it symbolize this whole collection, this whole family of people that you have come to know at some point. And forgive your piece of nature for not taking out the trash, for leaving the toilet seat up, for being late, for not loving you the way you expected to be loved, for maybe saying things that were unkind or you felt were unkind, for things that you felt slighted by. Whatever it is, forgive this piece of nature and all the people that are a part of your life. That way you can connect to them and be in aloha with all these people. And give thanks to all these people that are collected in your piece of nature. Give thanks to all of them, for being in your life, for being connected to you, for being in aloha with you, to share breath with you. There are a great many of them, and you don't have to think of them all individually. Let this piece of nature symbolize all of them, but know that they are all an important part of your life. So give thanks for all these people. And then send this piece of nature and all the people that are connected to it as much aloha as you can, from as deep within you as you can. Connect from the deepest part of yourself to the deepest parts of all of them. For that's who you are, love. Let your connection, let your aloha, let your whole being recognize that they are a part of you and you are an integral part of them. So to all of these people and to this little piece of nature, say in your heart as deeply as you can, thank you, mahalo. And before you put this piece of nature back in the basket, give it your breath. Add it to all the energy that's there, so that that energy will be there for the next person who picks this up. Thank you.
Mahalo.